welcome for your first time. We have two items on the agenda tonight. The lineup for this evening is a discussion to begin with related to a zoning challenge at 1122 Madison Avenue. And then after that, a returning guest, a frequent and returning guest that we enjoy having every time he comes, George Janes, will be here speaking about affordable housing, the fast track program, and a continuing discussion from our January meeting. But in the meantime, for those of you returning and your first time, I'm going to turn it over to Ian McKnight at the Community Board to give you the rules of the road for this evening. And then he will turn it back over to Anthony to pick up the discussion on 1122 Madison Avenue. So, Ian, over to
All
you.
right. Welcome. If this is your first time joining us virtually, you will notice that you are currently muted, and everyone will remain muted throughout the meeting except the committee co-chairs and any presenters as we move through the agenda. Following the presentations, co-chairs will call on members of the public wishing to speak. You can participate by pressing the raise hand button on the bottom of your screen, not the wave or thumbs up button, as those will disappear. Only press the raise hand button once. If you press it a second time, your hand will go back down and we will not call you. If you're calling in on the phone, you can press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute. After you're called on, be on the lookout for a prompt asking you to confirm unmuting once the co-chairs call on you. The chat is available for technical support to help with Zoom software problems only, not to ask questions of the co-chairs. They will not see the chats. If you are using an older version of Zoom, you may need to find the React menu, Participants menu, or a button that says More, where you will find the raise hand feature. If you plan to speak during the meeting, it would help us if you would rename your device with your full first and last name. And finally, please do not raise your actual hand or wave at the screen. We will not be able to see you. Use the raise hand function in Zoom only. If you have any questions, you can chat me. I'm here for support. Anthony, take it away.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ian. Our first item on our agenda this evening is as Ed pointed out, is a zoning challenge to a new building at 1122 Madison Avenue, and I believe some of the people involved in that challenge are here to sort of explain it to us, and I know they're going to have a PowerPoint for us as well. And then we'll have a brief discussion. We'll come back to this at a subsequent meeting because our second item with George is guaranteed to be extremely lengthy. So, Caroline, I guess you are going to take it away.
Yes, I'm Caroline Harris. Some of you know me as Carrie. I am a former board member at Community Board 8 and met Elizabeth during my sojourn on the board. I'm also, obviously by my presence here on this matter, a zoning attorney, and I think I had been going to enough community board meetings in my practice, and as much as the work that you do at Community Board 8 is so important, I needed a few nights at home. So I'm always happy to come back to this board as it's my own district board, and Elizabeth and others are people who uphold the community in wonderful ways. So nice to be here. This zoning challenge to 1122 Madison Avenue came about because we learned that there was the original building was supposed to be smaller, but then under City of Yes, there were some opportunities for it to be enlarged. And we were able to, we looked at the zoning diagram that's posted, as you well know, and there was something a little fishy about it. My zoning specialist and development specialist, Diane Liebs, is here tonight. She's been really digging deeply into this challenge, into the project, and helping to craft the challenge. And I'm going to let her go forward with the presentation. After at the end of the presentation, which is about our zoning challenge, just yesterday, we found, and was it delivered today, Diane? You can just nod. Delivered today, this morning to us, were changes to the plans that we had not known about when we brought the challenge. And we've also begun to analyze those very thoroughly. We're not amending our zoning challenge, but we're going to give you some um, information about what it appears the developer is doing, presumably to, I guess, address our challenge, but we're not certain that it does that at all. It makes some other changes that are ambiguous. We'll explain those, but we don't really have a final, like, stance on that. I know that on this call, there's the lawyer who's representing the purchaser of the units. I'm sure he's very interested in this challenge as well. So without more discussion, we'll turn it over to Diane.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having us tonight. As Carrie said, I'm Diane, and I'm a planning and development specialist here at Goldman Harris. And we're here today to talk about our concerns regarding the height at 1122 Madison Avenue. Should I just say next when I want the next slide? Yes. Okay. So for context, this is the location of the site. It's on the corner of East 84th Street and Madison Avenue. It is a predominantly residential new development that's under construction currently. You may see it going up. And it's about a block away from Central Park. And next slide, please. So you may have also heard about this building in Cranes, and some other articles picked this up. This is a 20-story building with 3 levels of a penthouse. I'm sorry, with 3 levels of a bulkhead. But the top 3 levels of the residential space is a triplex penthouse that's under contract for $89.5 million. So one of the floors of that penthouse is on the level that we're concerned about, because that area in red, as Carrie mentioned, is listed on the zoning diagram as a bulkhead. But when we dug further into the plans, we were able to see that it's actually, a portion of it is used as a residential unit. So as we continue through this presentation, that level that's highlighted in red is the level that we're speaking about. Next slide. So this is the zoning diagram that's approved that we were speaking about. It shows that there is a 20-story building, 235 feet in height, which is the maximum permitted building height in this district for a building that includes affordable housing, either on or off site. So they reached their maximum permitted building height. And then above that level, you're only permitted to have mechanical spaces and bulkheads. Mm-hmm. So this approved zoning diagram labels those top 3 levels above the maximum permitted building height just as a bulkhead. But again, as we dug further, we found that not to be true. Next slide. So this is the schedule of occupancy as shown on the Department of Buildings website, which specifically lists that this level in question has 1/3 of a triplex apartment and a private roof terrace, even though, again, the zoning diagram shows it's just a bulkhead. Next slide. And this may be a lot of colors, but this is the floor plan that we have annotated or marked up. So the black shows the extent of the building. This is all the same level, that level in red that I mentioned before. So the black is the outline of the building. Everything outside of the black is used for a terrace. The area in white, that white is shown on the approved drawing itself as residential space. So these approved DOB drawings show that there's a residential unit on this floor. It's a bit unclear how it was determined which spaces were considered to be residential floor area, because there's a portion of that main residential room that's not shown as floor area, even though it's part of the same room. There's also an internal staircase that's within that, so it makes the residential area look smaller, but in reality, they do have that internal grand staircase leading down to the other floors in their triplex. There's also 2 elevators and 2 egress stairs, which should be considered to be residential floor area if residences are the only use on this floor. So again, a bit unclear how they determine what's residential use, but in any case, there should not be any residential apartment on this level. There are also those 2 doors leading to residential terraces. So this unit has this 3rd level that shouldn't be there, plus these 2 terraces. So those are our concerns in red. Separately, we're concerned with the areas in purple, though those are presumably true mechanical spaces. We have concerns with those areas for other reasons. So under the zoning resolution, there are requirements for how far a bulkhead must be set back from the front wall. And those 2 areas in purple do not comply with those zoning requirements. They're too close to the front wall. So there should not be any bulkheads in those locations. So between the residential areas that shouldn't be on this level and the areas in purple that are too close to the building wall, there's a lot of space on this level that's not zoning compliant. So that was what we filed our zoning challenge for. And then, as Carrie mentioned, we got an update today. We have learned that
Before we get to the update, does anybody have questions about what what Diane's just explained? It's a lot to take in, and the diagram doesn't make it easy.
No, actually, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Because all of that space with the single diagonal hatch is coded as amenity.
Right.
So when I looked at this, I couldn't see, I mean, earlier, I couldn't see any distinction between any pieces of it. Now, how do you know that this, I guess I can sort of see a shadow of a stair in the area that you've labeled as internal stair from residential unit below. But I think we should continue and then we can come back.
Okay, the rest of it should
Certainly,
be brief. Basically what we found out was that they filed an amendment to this application last week, or not filed last week, but last week an amendment to this application was approved. And the scope of work for that amendment just says minor change to schedule of occupancy to correct duplex apartment dwelling count, which presumably means that they removed this residential unit from this floor. However, when we tried to obtain the DOB drawings, the expediter informed us that there were no drawing changes to the zoning sheets or the architectural sheets related to this work. So it's unclear to us how they were able to remove a dwelling unit from, or at least a portion of a dwelling unit from this level without having any drawings associated with it. So if this is still the last approved drawing, then how are they able to do that filing to remove it? So we still have questions about that and we want to dig into that further, but that's all the information we have at this time. So again, happy to take your questions. And to start with your first question about the amenity hatching, that's the hatch from the approved drawing. That wasn't
Right.
a hatch that we added. I assume that that's an error and it's meant to indicate mechanical space because the 2 bulkhead levels above this also labeled the area within the building as mechanical space. So that's my best guess.
The other reason that the red line is something we've imposed in our analysis to DOB. We did not parse through the floor to say what portion of this is residential and which isn't. It was obvious on the schedule of occupancy that it was intended to be residential. And you can also use common sense that if there's a huge terrace and there are doors and windows going out to it, it's not for the sake of the mechanical equipment, the 2 doors that you see indicated. So we didn't, in our zoning analysis and the challenge, we didn't get into this detail, but we did want to figure out, is there any credibility to the, why do they need any additional mechanical space or bulkhead above this? It's a very large bulkhead above it, even higher than this. We can go back to the drawing that was from the ZD1 to see that. And so the red line, we were trying to figure out where would be the boundary of the apartment. There's a wall at the edge where the red line is. That's the kind of indication on a plan that it's a solid separation between spaces, and there was no access from the left side of that red line into the right side of the red line.
Oh,
So
actually, just
that,
for clarification, the egress stairs do serve the entire floor.
right. If you
Right.
have a pointer, Diane, and I don't know if you can point to the line we're speaking about.
So I'm not actually sharing my screen, someone else is, so I don't think I'm able to
Well, so
point.
there's a line perpendicular to the word terrace going from the top to the bottom, right to the right there.
Yeah,
That
right there.
line is the
Is it a
kind of
wall?
is a wall, and it's not an interior wall separating rooms. It's a demising wall that separates spaces, and that the architects who work on my firm indicated that the way it was indicated below the red suggests that it's or indicates that it's a complete separation of that space. I agree with your question. I guess that Ed or Anthony, because I
Anthony.
didn't see why did they stripe all of this amenity if it's not part of an apartment? It is curious. Our analysis focused very specifically on the fact that this area, all of it, is above the 235-foot maximum. So regardless of how much floor area is in it, it's impermissible.
Okay. Let me just quickly ask if there are any members of the public who want to speak or ask a question right now. If not, we can go straight to the board. Oh, we just lost somebody. Okay, Adam.
Excuse me.
Hi, thank you, Diane. Thank you, Carrie. Well, I'm on the record as saying that this is not an appropriate forum for private zoning challenges. We nonetheless are entertaining your presentation. I disagree with the committee co-chairs regarding that. But if there are updated plans that are materially different than this, would it make sense to just table this for now and review those?
Well,
Because
so
now,
I'm sorry to interrupt. To answer, I guess, the first part of your question, that's what we were hoping to do. So we requested the drawings, but we were informed that there are none.
there
So,
are none.
right. So we don't understand
Well, you're gonna
how
get a
that's,
revised ZD, I mean, they have to have a revised ZD1, right, on.
that's what, right. That's what we think. But there's no revised ZD1, there's no revised architectural drawing, there's no revised zoning drawings, according to our expediter.
And so what is the remedy here?
What
So-
they changed is something in writing, in words, not with a drawing.
Right.
And they changed it to say that it was a two-level penthouse, not three.
So in words, it seems like they removed this level, but this is still the latest approved drawing to our knowledge. So we don't understand how that's possible, because then this wouldn't be consistent with the approved schedule of occupancy. So we don't know how that all plays out. That doesn't seem correct to us.
Okay. And so what is the proposed remedy?
We've done the zoning challenge, and the remedy and if we're correct in our challenge that there can't be residential occupancy above 235 feet, then the DOB should not approve their plans, or should revoke the zoning approval and make them take it off. There's a lot of money at stake, as we've indicated at the beginning. And if we're successful, I would imagine that they would appeal, and they must have some basis for arguing that this is illegal. It's legal to go above this 235 height. The issue of what can go above the height, the maximum height of a building has been litigated twice, that I know of. One I was involved with on 57th Street and another one down on 6th Street. Um, if we win and they challenge at DOB, if they win, then we could go to the BSA with a challenge. So there's a legal process to continue the debate about whether it's legal or not. We think it's not legal. And in terms of the failure, the absence of any additional drawings to show what their most recent filing really means, we will pester DOB to produce something like that. We've written not only to you and to Carnegie Hill neighbors, we've shared this information with the city council person and the borough president. And we would really love your support and your queries into the DOB, as well as your pressuring, you're asking the city council person to require that the building be zoning compliant and that this level be removed.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Adam. Sherry.
I was just curious, who is Goldman Harris representing? Who is bringing a zoning challenge?
We represent some people who live in the neighborhood who prefer to have their identity not known.
Oh, so they're not an organized group, or they're just residents?
They're residents. How organized they are, I can't tell you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sherry. Elizabeth Rose?
Thanks, Anthony. I am conceptually with you in spirit. Rules are rules, and the more people are able to break rules, the less secure the rules are. I do have some questions. The portion that is in white, which you sort of described as the residential portion, how is that differentiated, or why is that white versus the amenity shaded area within the red boundary?
That's a good question. That's what they designated as the residential space.
Okay.
We don't agree. We don't believe that's true.
Yeah, I mean the terrace on the upper part, that door is outside of the white space. Yeah, I hear you. So my
And
next
also
question is,
the hatching on the left is in the top corner. The internal stair going down, it's a double height ceiling. So all of that's
oh,
residential.
that's residential.
And your elevators are technically considered residential when they're serving a residential portion of a building.
And where are the elevators on this? I'm not.
The two squares straddling that corridor
Sort of
that
in that middle white corridor
Yes.
with the 3 doorways or the 4 doorways?
Yes, those are
There's the
both
elevators. Okay. So my next question is, what if, and this is again going to the what's the remedy here? What if they close off the double height, the staircase, and just floor that over, and the entire thing becomes a common roof deck access space? Is that still considered residential, or would that be considered amenity and be all of a sudden legal?
Diane, you could pick up from here. It's okay. Diane's muted.
Okay, thank you. So could you repeat that question? In this scenario, would it be enclosed space still, or it would be unenclosed?
So the scenario is block the block off access to the floor below from an interior staircase. Make that floor space, or just eliminate the double heightness. What you then have potentially is a building amenity of access to a common terrace. Is that still, if that were the case, if everything, including the white stuff, were an amenity and a common building-wide access, is that still illegal?
Yes.
It's my understanding that it would be, because you wouldn't be able to have anything above the maximum permitted building height that's not a permitted obstruction. And so permitted obstructions include mechanical space, stair bulkheads, elevator bulkheads, things like that. So I can't think of what they would be able to classify that floor area as to permit it on this level.
Basically, it's more
So,
residential space. The fact that it would be commonly used by others in the building doesn't change its character in the zoning. It's still residential space.
okay. So effectively, this would have to become, for lack of a better term, mechanical void
Or unusable.
for them
I mean, it's just
to
outdoor space.
not be able to just keep it. Let me obviously make it not usable to residents. If they just made it not usable to residents, it would be legal.
It might be, but they could also lower if you could go back, Diane, to the
saying-
ZB1.
This is not yet built,
Yeah.
so that it's at a point where it could be removed.
They could remove that whole floor and just drop the bulkhead to where
Just
the
drop the
bulkhead would
bulkhead.
normally
Okay.
be.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Okay, Valerie Mason next, and then Marco.
Hi, Carrie.
Hi, Valerie.
I will get back to you on your other matter
Thank you.
at another time. But I'm a little bit not really sure what. First of all, I don't think we can do anything here, to be honest with you. I appreciate you telling us that this is happening and making everyone aware, but we can't get involved in every private zoning challenge that's on the Upper East Side. But is there some kind of precedential value? I mean, I get that you think that they're violating the zoning and whatever, but is there some reason why you're bringing this to us and not other zoning challenges that you're working on? I mean, what is it about this that you think should be piquing our interest here?
That's a fair question. We don't bring many zoning challenges in my firm. We're not, it's pretty rare where we get involved in them. Although we do, and we only get involved in the ones that we think are the most egregious violations of the zoning, because as zoning attorneys who also represent developers as well as communities, we think the zoning has to be applied correctly and fairly. So that's a motivation here. When we first learned of the building, we saw no problem and told our client that. And then when it was, the plans were amended, we saw a problem. Now, the reason why this is a particularly interesting case is that it's one of the first ones under City of Yes that's using the UAP, the housing bonus, what's now a housing bonus, off-site in order to build a taller building. Madison Avenue historically has been very strict about the building height. And the way the zoning has changed under City of Yes, it does allow a greater height than previously. And now this developer is taking even more. So I think that's a bad precedent. It's a bad precedent for Madison Avenue, and it's a bad precedent for how this new zoning should be applied and interpreted. that's why it's of might be of particular interest to the board, because so much of the district is, there's been attempts to preserve so much of your district through for example, through the Madison Avenue Special District.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. And we've got Marco, then Michelle. Yeah.
Thank you, Anthony, and thank you, Carrie, for coming. Well, I think I had to be in agreement with the first person that spoke, that at this level we cannot do much because that is the interpretation of the Department of Buildings and the applicant. And whatever it is, legal or illegal, is just only the discussion between you and the Department of Buildings. However, I'm seeing right now a copy of the Schedule A, and the Schedule A clearly established residential. And the level that you mentioned is about 235 feet, which is the maximum. And I think on that part, I think you have a good case with the Department of Buildings. That probably they purchase some floor area and the remaining or the left floor area, or they bought more than they supposed, they want to cover on the roof above 235. I think that is the major issue. And the applicant, yes, they clearly in the Schedule A clearly mentioned this is a residential part, and then describe the residential part. And I think you have a good case. And DOB, I think you have to argue with DOB. And I think Mr. Pavin, I know very well him. I think he is knowledgeable and he will understand that part. However, they may kind of have some challenges or whatever it is. DOB always has the right to revoke. Even that they are wrong, they have the right to revoke whatever they want. So I think that will be the process that you should follow. Any post-approval amendment immediately is available on the web. And on that part, you should explore on the web. If not, you can go to the Department of Buildings, and on the third floor, you can pull it up, all the drawings, everything, zoning calculations, everything. And then you can do a better presentation to us. And however, you can go over there and you can obtain this information on DOB. That is available for everybody once it's approved. If it's not approved, so it's not available. So
It is approved.
yeah, so it is available, the approval.
We were told by our expediter. Our expediter tried pulling them, and the
No,
Department of Buildings.
usually you have to go over there. I know that very well, that because the drawings now we submit directly to DOB, and when the Department of Buildings or DOB approves, right away is in the system.
Right,
So
right.
probably he misread because it's a little bit harder now. It's very simple now, the process of approval, but at the same time it's harder because many people are confused and everybody's confused. I had to be very honest. So you have to be very diligent and to do a good research in the Department of Buildings or to request the latest PAA. So, well, I agree with you that they shouldn't have any residential use above 235. However, personally myself, I don't think that we can help you at this time. This is my opinion. Even though I agree with you, I don't think that we can do anything. However, if DOB is approving that and then impact in the UAP program, then we have probably to complain as a community board that they are going beyond what is allowed the CDOES. And I think later we're going to discuss probably the CDOES a little bit deeper. But my point is, you're right. I agree with you. I think you addressed the issue to Mr. Pavin. I know him very well personally. And I think he's knowledgeable. He can go in, you can argue in the way that you are saying right now. And then you can move from there. And
Yes,
thank you so much. And thank you for coming.
appreciate your thoughts, and our expediter is doing his utmost to get the plans, and it's a little concerning that they're not forthcoming from the building department. We wanted to inform you of this, both for the general knowledge of the community board. I know there have been other challenges. The one that's nearest to where I am was that building on Third Avenue that somehow got taller than it was supposed to be, and they were forced to bring down a level a few years ago. I think George worked on that. And we thought it might be of concern to you as a general concept that the building was being approved, contrary to the zoning and in a manner taller than it should be. And if you wanted to pick it up as a cause with us, that would be great. If you wanted to ask a council member to speak to the DOB, or you wanted to add your voices to the concern, we would welcome it. If you decide this isn't important enough to you to do that, we understand there's a lot on the plate of the community board right now in land use. But we would, of course, welcome uh, your chiming in about your concerns about the zoning being violated.
Let me be very clear. I think the position of this board, they should be that we have to respect the law. They should respect the zoning resolution. Whatever it is, it should be equal for everybody. And in your case, it looks like they're going beyond of that. And that's, I think, we need to discuss and reach a conclusion and then pass a resolution, and then we can support that. That probably should be the procedure in this case. Otherwise, we cannot reach any conclusions. Myself, I cannot reach, but probably I will plan it to be in DOB during this week. I will ask the record of your project, and then I will have a very understanding what are you saying, even though the diagrams are very strict, is very clear for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tamayo. I am concerned that a unit that's this high a cost, that the developer, and I know the potential purchaser's representative is here, it may be exercising some pressure on DOB to maintain the height of the building as they've proposed. That's a concern I have. So
I agree
we
with
want to
you.
make sure they're vigilant about enforcing the zoning resolution.
I agree with, and usually DOB is very strict when it's coming beyond the limits, and they don't want to be in the news. They hate that. So I think DOB will be very smart in that part. That's the only thing I'm going to say. And thank you so much.
Thank you,
for your
Marco.
Thank you.
Okay, we have Michelle and Alida, and then I think we should move the agenda one bit.
Sure.
So Alida has dropped
Yeah.
out. Okay.
Thank you, Anthony. I'll tell you what I'm trying to understand here is why we shouldn't be very concerned about this. I don't really understand what the reservation is. This is a community board who is so height-minded. We have our resolution about height requirements that we were asking for on York, First, Second, and Third Avenues. We very carefully monitor the height of any and all construction. So I don't understand. I understand that if there's a lawsuit, that the community board as an entity doesn't want to be pulled into a lawsuit. But as a separate entity concerned about height limits and following the zoning resolution, I don't understand what the reservation would be for us to very carefully study this and make a statement, if nothing else, a strong statement about it. The only thing that is concerning me here is we said very emphatically, well, not so emphatically, that there's a 235-foot height maximum, but maybe not under the city of Yes. Well, that's a very big maybe. So can you clarify that for me? Because
Sure.
there either is a 235-foot limit, and I don't care if it's residential or not residential. Once you're telling me it exceeds the height limit. So unless there's something special written that we don't know about, why is there a little qualifier in there? Carrie, can you explain that?
I can explain I think what Diane meant was that there's a 235-foot height limit, and the bulkhead is above that. The bulkhead can be higher. Mechanical
And the
equipment can be higher.
mechanicals can be.
Yes,
Right.
but not space that's occupied by people in the building.
Okay, but this is
That's right. That's why this is
Yes,
we submit
so
that this is a violation.
okay, so to me that I don't know why there's an if and or but about it. If it exceeds, if it's a residential or whatever it is, if it's not the mechanicals and it's usable space, whether it be partitioned out as an apartment or a barbecue pit for the building, however it's partitioned out, if it's not a bulkhead and if it's not um, mechanical space, I as I said, I don't know why there's confusion. And the floors that were knocked off, that somebody was referring to, I believe was a building in the 90s that was already constructed, and there were 2 or 3 floors taken off a decade or so ago. Elizabeth would probably know
That was a slightly different situation.
Famous case. I think that the one I was referring to was, I think, 80, maybe 83rd. No.
83rd and 3rd. They claimed they had space because they were taking space on, no, that was 88th Street. Never mind.
The 88th Street,
Scratch that.
it's an 88th Street building that just seemed to get higher. I don't remember the
Yes,
rationale,
and
but
they
then
were claiming they had a bigger footprint on 88. I don't remember the details, but I remember the situation. At any rate, what I'm saying is, to me, when we're talking about a remedy, the remedy is they shouldn't be doing this. And I don't know, I'm not understanding. There's something in the law that I don't understand or know about that's making this an iffy
No,
situation.
it's not, Michelle. It's not iffy if it's being used as a residential space.
Okay.
So I think that I think we can move past that. I
Okay.
think what
So
we
that being the case, I would say that it's perfectly appropriate for the community board to make an assessment or a statement about this. I don't know if it has to be a resolution,
no,
I don't know,
but
whatever you
Michelle, we
guys
can't do
want.
anything about it until we learn what the most recent drawings, the most recently approved things
Absolutely.
are. So we will take this up again next month and have that conversation.
Fine.
Okay. Are you waving your hand? You don't want to be called on? You want to be called on. Elizabeth Rose wants 2 bites of the apple. Go ahead.
But
So I would like to propose that we write a letter and that the letter be completely neutral. We have received this information. We believe strongly in the importance of our zoning regulations, and we ask that the DOB and whatever other organizations are involved apply the rules consistently, specifically, and fairly, and that there be no residential space or use above the 235-foot mark. Basta. We are not advocating for this particular client. We are advocating for fair and appropriate and correct application of the zoning rules. We write letters lots of times because constituents complain about a situation that may be perfectly legal, it's just annoying. So I am in agreement with Michelle. What is wrong? with simply writing a letter saying this has come to our attention. We don't need to wait for new drawings because at the moment there are no new drawings, and this is a process that is ongoing. The train may be leaving the station. What is wrong with simply saying this has been raised to us? It is of concern to us. We would like the zoning rules applied correctly, which we understand means nothing residential above 235 feet. Period.
Yes, okay, that kind of letter is just fine. I think what we really need to do right now, and I really thank you very much, Carolyn and Diane, for bringing all of this to our attention. And this is not the only place where this has been a problem. Already the city of Yes, there were some enlargement to what we've been calling the Spitzer Building on Fifth Avenue as a result of City of Yes. So this is not only not isolated, but it'll probably come up again and again and again. So I thank you for bringing it up, and we will try and figure out what kind of a letter we can write to the Department of Buildings. And just parenthetically, we asked them to join us this evening, and they declined our kind and respectful offer. So we'll see what happens from here. I'd like to move the agenda. So unless it's really burning, DJ and Marco, I would like to turn it over to Elizabeth. Okay. And we will move on to George. But Elizabeth will handle that piece wherever she is.
We
I'm
have hands
here.
waving. Were there on the yellow hands? Valerie and Marco are waving. Does that mean
Yeah.
bye-bye or?
I know Marco wants to say something, and I'm trying to ignore him.
And Valerie wants.
And Valerie is waving and gesturing, but I think she wants to move the agenda, doesn't she? No, she wants to say something. Okay.
And
All right, Marco, and
let's
then
ask them to
Valerie.
be, please be very succinct.
Hit it,
I'm gonna
Marco.
be very quick. I think the letter A should be asking for the interpretation with the new city of Yes, because that we can make for all the projects, not only for this one. I think that's the only comment I would like to do it, and I agree with Elizabeth. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm not going to write a letter based on this. That's what I'm telling you. Because you just said it, Anthony. I mean, am I going to have a form letter and write it about every private zoning challenge until we have some more information? Of course, the community board is in favor of enforcing the zoning resolution as drafted for every matter that comes in front of it. Unless you want to sit here every month and go over every single zoning challenge that's being done in our district, I want to know a little bit more before we decide we're going to write a letter asking them to do what is their job. So I move the agenda, but as of tonight, I'm not writing a letter unless we have some more information.
Well, thanks to all of you for listening and asking such good questions, Diane, and for letting us. I didn't thank Elizabeth previously for letting us go first before what will prove to be a very interesting discussion with George. But I really appreciate that you let us go first. So thank you, and
Thank you.
thanks to everybody for a very nice conversation and asking the good questions you did.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now we would like to welcome George Janes, who is our most popular speaker, our most informative speaker. And so we're very happy to have
him now, and I hand it over to you, George, and we'll look forward to hear what you have to say.
Great. Thanks so much. I am here today primarily to talk about Fast Track, and I am going to share my screen if that's okay.
Please.
Oop, all right. I have sent a request to share my screen. And I have now the ability. Thank you. Okay. So I'm really glad to be here because this is about Fast Track. What is Fast Track? And Fast Track is a part of charter revision. We all remember that we did charter revision late last year. And in November, it all passed, right? And the stated goal to charter revision was, quote, easing the process to construct more housing, including affordable housing, in an effort to make it easier to build more housing across the city. And the revisions were responding to concerns that some neighborhoods vetoed new housing, and even in places that did not refuse new housing, the process was slow and unpredictable, or at least that was the stated concerns. And so question 2, we all voted for the revision. And question 2 approved 2 paths forward for fast tracking affordable housing. The first one was zoning waivers from the Board of Standards and Appeals for low income housing. And the second one was fast track at the City Planning Commission for affordable housing projects in the 12 community districts that have produced affordable housing at the lowest rate. And all right, so 12 community districts that produce housing at the lowest rate. Well, how do you calculate that? Well, on February 13th, DCP released the draft rules for determining the 12 community districts that qualify for fast track. Essentially, the 12 that are producing affordable housing at the lowest rate. And the rules are pretty straightforward. I have a link to them in this deck, but they can be summarized like this, is that for each community district, you sum the number of affordable housing units that have started and have received a building permit between July 1st, 2021 and June 30th, 2026. You divide that number by an estimate of the total number of housing units in the district on July 1st, 2021. You rank order all of them by that rate, and then the bottom 12 in the rate of affordable housing production will be designated fast track. And so the rules are there. The data are in open data. And so what my office did was we applied the rules with the most recent data, and we produced preliminary rankings. Oops, sorry. And made a map. So and the map you see here, the red districts are likely to be in fast track, and the yellow districts are close to the edge. They may or may not be, and so there may be some swapping depending on how the final data turn out. And so what we're seeing, though, in Manhattan is that community districts 5, 7, and 8 are likely to be fast track districts. Community districts 6 and 2 are close to the edge. But the data are lumpy, especially in Manhattan, where a single project can make the difference. So, like I like pointing out with Community District 2, the West Village, it's outside fast track, but it had exactly 2 affordable housing projects, one with 175 units in that 5-year period, and that's enough to get them outside fast track, or at least if the numbers hold up. Community District 5 produced nothing in the period and is ranking last. So currently, Community Board 8 ranks 8th from the bottom, which means as of today, using these data and methods, it will be a fast-track district. However, these results only take into account data up to March 5th, 2026. So that means there's going to be 4 more months of data that must be processed before the final rankings can be made. And also, because of the difficulty of merging HPD data and DOB data, as well as other data imperfections, there's likely errors in the method that we've applied. So we can't make any conclusions for definitively, at least for those districts that are close to the line. All that being said, let's get into the details. So there are 18 records in HPD's data in Community District 8. These are them. And HPD data cover the affordable housing projects that have started since 2014. But we can't count all of these because this goes beyond the performance period. And so what we need to do is we need to take each record in HPD's file and run it through a decision tree, whether it can be counted as in the fast track period. And so projects have to have started, meaning HPD says they're started, and issued a building permit in that window, July 1st to July 30th, 2026. And that requires matching the DOB data to HPD data. And DCB has done some of this. My office did others. And when that is done, and we put them all together, these following 9 records, which sum to 99 affordable units, count in the fast track reporting period. This is it. This is all of them. Almost half of them are in one project on First Avenue. These 99 units are then divided by an estimate of the total number of housing units in the district on July 1st, 2021, and develop the rate to rank order all the community districts. Now, I've put up some questions. Now, if the chair would like to, I see there's a lot of hands, and if people want to ask questions, it's up to the chair. It's fine to take a break right now.
Mine can certainly wait.
Okay, I will go on if it's up to you. Okay, so considerations, things to think about. So the draft method is simple to understand. It's just like affordable housing divided by total, and you have a rate. But it's actually difficult to implement, right? So as I was saying earlier, DOB and HPD, you got to match these files together. And sometimes they use different block and lot numbers for the same project, which could mean when you're joining them together, you can miss a permit. So it's easy to make errors. It's also very small projects are typically listed as confidential by HPD. So it's impossible to determine whether those have a permit or not. And in our rankings, we assumed all confidential projects have a building permit. The draft rules say that fast track determinations made by the CPC chair will be final, and that the rankings will not be amended even if an error is found. And there will be errors. So if there is an error, this is a question for you all to think about. If there's an error that's found that impacts the rankings, should it be corrected? All right, another question. If I can move forward, there we go. The draft method ignores affordable housing preservation. So HPD tracks both new affordable housing and preserved affordable housing. The rates that we're using for fast track are based only on new units, including conversions of existing buildings like office to residential conversions. Preserved affordable housing units do not count and are not a consideration in the ranking at all. And the City Planning Commission, when they heard this item, I don't know, a month or so ago, they asked DCP to reconsider omitting preservation units from the method. And DCP said that they were going to look into it, but they haven't produced anything different yet. And so should the method ignore preserved affordable housing, or should it consider preserved affordable housing? I point out this building here. This is a building on East 73rd Street. It was preserved in the period. 99 low-income rentals were preserved in this building, and it does not count. 3, all affordable housing units are treated exactly the same. So these rankings treat units at 165% of AMI the same as units that are at 40% of AMI. They're one unit. Large units, like a 3-bedroom unit, is counted the same as a studio apartment. That means, like, if you have a 150,000 square foot building with 100 large apartments serving families at the lowest income bands, it could be the same, count the same, as a 50,000 square foot building with 100 studios serving 165% of AMI. Right? And so there's just no different weighting at all. And really the consideration for you all to think about is MIH, mandatory inclusionary housing, has options that trade depth of affordability with the amount of floor area. The lower the AMIs, meaning the AMIs serving lowest income bands, the less affordable floor area is required. And so the fast track rules might influence which MIH options council members choose in MIH areas. If so, is that okay? And so the question is should all units count the same, regardless of size and AMI? 4, and I'll start with the question here, is being on the fast track list good, bad, or something else? So some have concerns that fast track communities are losing a local voice in the land use process. The council will not have a say on land use issues that are in fast track communities. But that might not be the whole story. So I speculate, and this is my own personal speculation, that the city will focus resources to fast track districts so that after 5 years, those districts are no longer on the fast track list. Simply, I think the city is going to want to show progress. They're going to want to say, oh, yeah, this is working. And so affordable housing advocates might want to find their district on the list, as the fast track districts might garner more attention and subsidies from the city in the next 5-year period. Something to think about. And then for information, only income restricted housing with a regulatory agreement counts as affordable housing. So that would be anything requiring an HPD lottery or a NYCHA lottery where you have to show where you qualify and have to show your income levels. That would also include most permanent supportive housing. But it would not include temporary shelter housing. It would not include rent-stabilized housing that is not income restricted, like a lot of the pre-1974 traditional rent-stabilized housing. And then, little niches like employer-owned housing that's for the benefit of employees. That may be affordable to the employees, but it wouldn't count for this. And so the proposed shelter on First Avenue would not count for fast track. Finally, fast track only counts the gross new affordable housing units. So it ignores net change in dwelling units. It ignores net change in affordable units. So if income restricted units are lost, they don't count against fast track. This is only talking about gross increase. If a building that has 100 rent stabilized units is demolished to produce 40 market rate and 10 affordable units, the fast track method counts that as a plus 10 for the district. And I'm going to talk just a little bit more here about net change, because that's an issue specifically for this district. This district has been pointed out by DCP as having lost units. And there's some truth to this, is that, because there's a lot of residences already in this district, new development often requires demolition of existing housing. Here are 3 projects. The MSK building on York Avenue required the demolition of 334 units. Northwell Health on 3rd Avenue, 58 units. The medical facility over on First Avenue, 102 units lost. But it's not just non-residential development. When you have residential development, the single-family conversions of tenements to single-family homes, there's a bunch of them. And then a lot of the newer buildings, they are smaller in unit count than the buildings they replace because they have enormous units in them. And so they have fewer units total. And it could be argued that some of the policies are making this problem worse. These are proposed buildings in the district, all of which are producing fewer units than the building that they are replacing. But next week's hearing will only be on the draft rules to select fast track districts, right? So it's none of this other stuff about net. Yeah, that's not really here. It's about what these draft rules should be to select fast track. And the hearing is a week from tomorrow at 10 a.m. at the City Planning Commission. The written comments are due the same day. By law, fast track community districts must be determined by October 1st. And if you have thoughts on the draft rules, the data, I encourage comments. And if you have thoughts about the data that's discussed and things about your district, I would love to hear them. And then at the bottom here, I will give this to Ian. There are some excellent discussions at the City Planning Commission. The commissioners asked a lot of really good questions. There was a public information session on charter revision on March 16th. I have the YouTube for that. And then tomorrow, there is a public information session by DCP on fast track rulemaking, and you can register. I have the registration link. That is what I have.
What time is that, George, if I may ask?
Tomorrow at 6 p.m. Oh, I also have in the back here, if you wanted to know other districts, I did them all.
Oh, thank you, George. Are there any members of the public who would like to comment or ask a question?
I'm not seeing any raised hands, Elizabeth.
Okay. Let's see, who are people in order?
We have Alita.
Alita, is she the first?
Yes.
Okie doke, Alita, up to you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. George, thank you so much for your presentation. I don't really understand, and I have questions in 2 different areas. One is that if we are a fast track district, what do the rules say about the number of affordable units that are required in a building that will have, I'm sure, a lot more market rate units? Is there what will be dictated?
There is nothing.
So, because doesn't DCP or city planning bear any responsibility for the mess that this district is in, where we're flooded with tall market rate buildings, any affordable units, like Elliot Spitzer made a point of saying he was giving $7 million to affordable housing, but not in the district. So the housing is pushed out of the district because of the city planning rules. The height is not limited, so they go up and they put in the market rate housing and no affordable units. So what we'll see is far more congestion, and it's not at all our fault because we've been asking for affordable units for years. So I'm just wondering how all of this would work, and why we're considered that when we have nothing to do with this. We've not said no to affordable units. We've asked for them. I just don't understand because I know they will be coming after us, and yet we will see again, I suspect, more of an exit of affordable units as they tear down more walk-ups to put up more high rises with very limited numbers of affordable units.
Right. So let me comment on one thing here. This is a piece of a bigger puzzle. I will remind everyone that by October of this year, every community district will be assigned growth targets. Growth targets a number of housing units, growth targets a number of affordable housing units, supportive housing units, and land use actions taken over the next 5-year period, along with this, need to be consistent with those growth targets. And so the idea, I think, is, Alita, that rezonings that require affordable housing will be easier to pass because the council will not have any say. The process will be faster because the only hearing for these projects will, in almost all cases, be at the community board and not at the city planning commission. And so you have a much more compressed timeline. And so the hope, or at least I don't know if this is true, but what people are hoping is that there will be rezoning actions that require affordable housing, and that will bring affordable housing when those projects get developed.
But there's no, I mean, MIH requires when they rezone like the Friedland building on 94th Street, I think they came in and said they'd put in 20 or 25%, and we asked for 30%, and they didn't like that and complained about it. So is there any, so we're just going to see more rezonings for very, very tall buildings with very, very few comparatively affordable units, and we will be bashed in terms of more congestion and less, and we'll be seeing probably a net decrease in affordable units because it doesn't matter that they tear them down.
So that's an interesting point. So if there's a rezoning, we've developed new zoning districts, R11s and R12s. And if there are rezonings of the avenues from R10s to an R11 or R12, that would trigger MIH, and it would produce, if development happens like that, between 20 and 30% of the floor area to be affordable. Now, what your point saying is that, but there aren't empty sites that you could just put these buildings on. Normally, you're tearing something down to put up those buildings, and those units are typically either smaller market rate buildings or more often rent stabilized units, and those rent stabilized units are not counted. And even if they were income restricted, they wouldn't count against the development, right? This is all about adding new without paying any attention to the net change.
And there's no limit on the percentage of AMI that these so-called affordable units will have.
So for MIH, there is, right? So MIH focuses more on the lower ends, but there's lots of different term sheets at HPD, some of which handle much higher AMIs, which are not zoning based. And so therefore, you have some units that could go all the way up to 165%, but those wouldn't be zoning. Those wouldn't be based upon a zoning bonus.
There just seems to be something wrong where we'll get is much more market rate and potentially fewer or very limited affordable units while increasing the density and congestion in the densest neighborhood in the country. So I want affordable housing, but I don't think this is the way to do it here. I'll stop now. Thank you so much, George. Always a pleasure to hear you.
Thanks, Alita. Now, Ed, I think you're the next one with a paw up.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Elizabeth. Yeah, George, it's sort of kind of what Elisa was asking about. My question was just like, is this a good thing or is this impossible? In that, kind of what Alita was saying, yay, we get more affordable housing, but we've had this ongoing discussion for a long time, and taking it from the developer's end, they just say the math doesn't work. It's if it worked, we'd have more, according to them, and we take that at face value. That's fine. But and so the question then becomes, is it just impossible? Is it such a situation? And I guess it's sort of what Alita was referring to. I guess then it becomes the only way they can do that then is to tear down units
Right.
already quote unquote affordable. So never mind. Mine was more sort of this existential, more of a broader question, I think, nothing specific. So I'll let somebody else, with a little more specificity ask a question. Unless you have a comment.
I mean, the only thing I would say to that is what's been interesting to me as somebody who's going through the data and looking at who gets selected as a fast track and not a fast track community is that it's a mixture. One of the reasons for doing this is because there are community districts in Staten Island and Eastern Queens that say no to affordable housing. They are like, we don't want affordable housing in our district. And so they're like, well, we're going to take away your power to say no. That was one of the reasons for doing this. But at the same time, the method that gets applied is picking up districts in the Manhattan core that never say no, right? That are like, we need affordable housing. It picks up the district that is ranked last, Community District 5, just did the biggest upzoning ever for affordable housing, and they recommended it, right? I mean, the community board was just like, yes, let's do this, and they're like last, and so it's kind of like, and that speaks to the method, right? That speaks to the method, and so
the method is definitely flawed. I would give you that. I have definite issues with the rules and I'm going to go down that road now. But the question is to whether or not if they can't correct their error. I'm sure there are lots of attorneys on this call that are saying to themselves the number 78 as an Article 78 popping to mind. I don't know if you can get away with that, but that's a whole other discussion. But yeah. Anyway, I'll let Adam ask his question. He has usually something more specific. Thanks, George.
Okay, thank you, Ed. And yes, it's Adam next.
Thank you. I had one statement and then one question. First of all, to respond to Alita's statement that was incorrect, that Mr. Spitzer's building is purchasing UAP from a affordable housing development within Community Board 8. George identified it. It's the James Lennox house. So that's not correct. Second of all, my next question is if you could get your presentation up, is that possible? I just had a question. I think on like the third or fourth slide, I think it's gonna, I just wonder how.
Sure. 1 second.
Okay. No, one more, couple more.
Yeah. Those are the 18. These are the
there we go, right here.
count.
Right.
Yep.
So 355 East 86th Street. And I actually looked at this. I looked at the regulatory agreement. It says 9 affordable units in your chart, and it says, in the regulatory agreement, it says 9. I think it's supposed to be 9 inclusionary units. If they're going for a 485X, they have to do 20% affordable.
I listen.
Right.
You
so
and I were seeing the same thing.
Yeah, I wonder how this is being counted consistently. And even for 250 East 83rd Street, Torkian's building, or 300 East 83rd Street, La Lazarian's building, there's no way they only did 5 affordable units. They qualified for, 421A, 485X, or 4. Those are both vested 421A buildings, but you need to do 20% affordable to qualify.
I completely agree.
I think it's a misnomer between affordable and inclusionary, and these buildings are generating a lot more affordable building units than what these charts are showing.
Okay, let me comment on that. Is that they both need regulatory agreements, and so they both should be here, right? And they both should be included in the HPD data. And Adam, if I can ask you a favor, if you just write down what you said about those buildings, because you have some more information about them, I would love to receive it. The thing I would say about 355 East 86th Street is that one of your previous meetings I talked about this building and saying that it wasn't appearing in the HPD database that talks about
Right.
buildings going for 485X.
Right.
So maybe it's not.
Well, when you go by it and you see the building going up, you can see that they're building the two buildings. You can
Yes.
see the line in between the buildings.
Yeah.
So the reason to do that is to comply with 485X, and by virtue of doing that, 20% affordable.
I do
So,
not disagree with you. It's just not showing up that way in the data.
right. I just think they're not they're not distinguishing affordable versus inclusionary. They're just lumping them all together.
That would be a huge error, and that would make a
I think
huge
that's what's
difference
happening.
in this district.
I think that's what's happening.
That would make such a huge. Well, okay. All we're doing is processing the data that
Right.
HPD publishes, and if they are omitting that component of affordable housing, it would be a huge error, and it's something that we should try to get in front of right now. And if you all are making comments, that needs to be a part of your comments.
That's also what I was referring to, George, as to the lawyers in terms of that kind of error. It has a significant impact financially on people, I would imagine, as well.
Yeah, I think this is. Yeah, I mean, I think for Mason 78, they have it right, but I don't think it's right for the other ones, and I think it's right for 1026 Third Avenue as well, but I don't think it's right for 250 East 83rd, 300 East 83rd, 355 East 86th, so on and so forth. So,
as I said, there will be errors.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Now, Elizabeth, the other Elizabeth.
Thank you. I would actually like to propose a resolution, and if seconded, I will speak to it. I would like to propose a resolution that we submit comments, very much in solidarity with the other community boards that have already commented. So, support for including preserved units in the count of affordable units. And I'm going to just editorialize for a second. For once, I am going to propose that we color within the lines. We are being asked about the rules for determining who is in fast track. This is not about whether we think fast track is a good thing or a bad thing. This is not about whether the outcomes of fast track are good or bad. I would like to propose a fairly narrow letter saying, here's what we think about the proposed rules for fast track. So, in solidarity with the other community boards that have already responded, we support including preserved units in the count of affordable units, because that very much represents an area of importance to this community. We support data transparency and review and an opportunity to correct, regardless of whether it changes the outcome of a fast track designation. The data should be correct, and to all of the points that have been made, the data is difficult and is subject to lots of error. At least we should be able to correct the data for future. 3, supporting some sort of a balance formula that takes into account unit count and square footage / count of bedrooms and AMI, because clearly there is value in lower AMI. There is value in family-sized apartments. We would like to encourage affordability for lots of different types of family units, not just studio apartments. And we think back at what 94th Street did. We asked for a higher percentage of affordable. What we got were studio units. That wasn't what we were asking for. So we need some sort of a balance in what gets counted in the numerator. I am certainly open to to possible friendly amendments for other things very specifically, narrowly focused on the rules for determining fast track. I do believe that the whole question of demolition of rent stabilized units is important, but that is a question for what gets approved in the fast track process. That is not a question of the narrow, what are the rules and regulations for fast track? I would be totally open to a clause or a couple of points in the letter after the very specific recommendations for the data or for the fast track inclusion that says, in general, we are concerned about the loss of state rent stabilized units in favor of buildings with larger square footage and fewer units and other things like that. But those are really about the outcome of the fast track process, not the input to defining fast track. And I think we should focus fairly within the lines, within the box, on the inputs to determining fast track status.
Thank you. If we write a letter, I think this might be a common effort of the committee, sending a draft around, add or subtract. If we want to do it, I think input from the full committee would be useful. And you've made a motion for that, or is this just a suggestion?
No, I think that Elizabeth made a motion, Kimberly
Okay. Is it
and
seconded?
Sharon appear to be seconding it.
Okey doke. So the motion is to write a letter based on the facts in the other community board communications.
I
Is that
think
it?
I think Elizabeth, we actually could, and maybe this is a point of discussion based on our earlier conversation with our next commenter, Valerie, that that we could in fact pass a resolution here in committee that would then be submitted pending its approval by the full board later, something like that. I think that was the phraseology. So instead of a letter, it's more of a formal resolution, I think.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Okay. You made so that that is your resolution.
Yeah. I had 3 specific points, including preserved units in the count of the numerator, data transparency, the opportunity to review and correct, support for a balance of unit count, square footage, count of bedrooms, and AMI for in the numerator, such that larger units and lower AMI units count more than simply 1. And those were my 3.
Okie doke. So on this motion, Ian, can we call the roll?
No, I think Valerie, I think we should let other people speak. The question hasn't been called.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Okay, Valerie?
Yeah, hi. I'm obviously in favor of this, I'm in favor of this. As we were speaking earlier today, we should go on the record regarding the rulemaking. I completely agree with Elizabeth Rose that how it turns out is going to be a whole nother story. A couple of points and then some questions. I mean, we do, when I say we, the community board does retain its role in the fast track process, okay? It's just on a more expedited basis. And you can make an argument that for the things that we want to do to create the affordable housing that we want, such as moving forward with our original plan to turn manufacturing zones into residential zones, the fast track process could be a good one, but that's not the debate tonight. In fact, I'm not sure there should be a debate, but in terms of Elizabeth's motion, I wanted to ask George, why can't we count employer-owned housing for purposes of the units? I think that detrimentally affects us, given the fact that we have all of these hospitals which are providing residences, and we're losing the ability to count those. And that seems
Totally
a
agree,
little unfair.
Valerie. I totally agree. We can add that to the list.
Yeah, it needs
Especially when
to.
they're taking out apartments that were rent stabilized.
Well, regardless, I mean, somebody's living
By
there.
definition, employer housing is subsidized in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I mean, and we have a lot of that. And, you know, I'm not sure whether that hurts us or helps us, but we definitely have residences. And then in the first iteration of this counting of the units, I'm not sure it's fair to start at 2021, which is, you know, the year after COVID. I mean, maybe you look at 5-year periods starting in 2026, but I think there are a lot of areas, including our own, that may not have seen as robust construction during that time period, given what was happening, the state. And when I say state, meaning the status of the economy in New York and who was going to build things and how that was all going to transpire. So I'm not even sure whether that's the right starting point for measurement in terms of units produced. So that would be another thing. And I know the next one isn't really a new idea, but there has to be some kind of appeals board that's available to challenge where we are in terms of either helping us get on the list if we wanted to, if we thought the process was incorrect, but having the list be static for 5 years seems like a very arbitrary time period. I don't know where the actual 5 years came from, but I'm not sure if we're fast tracking, why are we waiting 5? Why isn't it changing like every 3 based on housing starts, et cetera? And again, if they're going to allow Elliot Spitzer to get the credit for giving $7 million to the existing unit, then we should be getting credit for that too. Because if that wasn't the case, then he should not be able to get the credit for giving additional monies to existing existing supported or affordable housing. And then the other point is, I think we should include in our letter or resolution Adam's specific examples of what we think are mistakes in just the data that we're seeing now. So those would be my ads. I mean, this doesn't have to be definitive but you know, we're being asked to comment on the rulemaking. And for those of you who are interested, we can send around to members of the committee the resolutions that were passed by 2 and 6. There are others. But again, I don't think that fast tracking would necessarily be bad for us because we're very familiar with the community and in terms of what our housing needs are. And I think this board has shown that we can have hearings very quickly, come up to speed on what's being asked of us. And in fact, unfortunately, we were having this discussion a little bit earlier, maybe showing how even fast tracking our community, if we don't get housing out of fast tracking, if we make the list, then nobody wants to put affordable housing in our neighborhood. And this will make it evident to people outside the board in this community who have been clamoring for it for forever. So, you know, I don't think it's that bad an idea, but those would be my additions to the list. Thanks.
Thank you. Is it
Low
the what?
public. I was going to say, Elizabeth, I don't know if you saw that Low Vandervalk
Oh, wait.
public is
We didn't have a member of the public when we started.
No, but now we
Low, how many members of the public have we got?
Just one.
just one,
Just one.
just low.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The member of the public is Low?
Yes.
Okay, Low, you're up.
Okay, my name is Lo Vanderkalk, representing Carnegie Hill Neighbors. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Is it possible that your draft letter can be circulated before the meeting next week so that we can all benefit from it in our own testimony? That's my question.
Today, Tuesday.
I
Hope so. How's that?
Yeah,
Or can it be circulated in draft or in
Yeah.
some form?
but I do think that we have to make sure we get everybody's wishes in it, which means I think circulated among the committee members before we finalize it.
Well, yeah, I mean, but the hope is that the general public can benefit from this and have correct wording and a correct conceptualization in their testimony to the commission or the agency. I guess
Okay.
it's city planning.
Yeah.
So
Well, I guess we'll see what we can do, and Ian, do you have any thoughts on that?
I think we can circulate something. I'll wait for you all to get me a letter, and then I'm happy to share it as you see fit.
yeah, maybe it can be noted as preliminary and still information, but it would allow us to have something at least.
Okay, we will try. Thank you for the suggestion.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, our next speaker, are you called DJ? Okay, you're up.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, sorry about that. Thank you for the presentation, George and Elizabeth, for bringing the resolution. Few comments. Regardless of data merging issues, which I think should be hashed out, I think the baseline fact is there. We either produce 99 affordable units, or pending Adam's concern, maybe it's 200, 300 if you get the inclusionary versus affordable, right? I think it's still very paltry. It's across 9 buildings. It doesn't look all that great for us. I know it's not on any one individual, but I don't see being on the fast track list as a punishment or getting hit. You know, I think it's a benefit to our district to finally get the attention and tools and mandate to produce affordable housing that we haven't gotten for a long time. I think more neighbors is a good thing. It's a sign of a healthy, growing city. I do support the call for the data transparency part of the letter. It should be a public reviewable data set, but I don't want to see data perfection create analysis paralysis, and I definitely don't want to see some new legal proceeding way to throw a wrench in the gears of this whole thing, because people will definitely utilize it, and the point is to move and get more housing built in a housing emergency that's been declared for over 50 years. On the other pieces on preserved versus new, I'm ambivalent. I think new units are generally better. They are safer, better built. They actually grow the housing stock. They're more environmentally friendly. I think we have a fetish for pre-war old buildings that are often falling apart. I will say, as an insurance professional, I've worked on property insurance for a long time. Older buildings are much riskier, and that's why we're seeing this insurance crisis, which is getting a lot of ink right now in other parts of the city. So I'm ambivalent, but I would like to give new units primacy. So I'm actually inclined to say I think new units are better. On the height and unit size, Elizabeth, I think there's a good argument for including that, but we've heard concerns about, studios over family units. It was in the materials that were shared ahead of the meeting as well. I feel like I'm seeing a bit of a paradox from this board in particular. During the East 94th Street rezoning, I guess we successfully, if you call it that, argued for lower height, which led to smaller units directly, and people considered that a victory. So if we're now saying, well, actually, we want bigger units, I guess I would just point out, sure, I'd want to know what the equation's actually going to look like, and if it becomes some kind of complex weighting that includes square footage or AMI, I guess I agree with it on principle, but I don't want to make the rule too hard to implement and thus easier to challenge so that groups can gum up the works on this process. I'll stop there. I had more comments, but since we're just debating this resolution, I'll stop. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Michelle?
What about? I think you skipped over Kim.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see you. You vanished on me.
I'm sorry.
Okay, Kimberly.
I beg your pardon, Elizabeth. I won't do it again. I mean, obviously, I'm in favor of Elizabeth's resolution. I seconded it. Um, I think one of the things that particularly sticks with me about fast track is the fact that, in addition to just the data transparency, it's also the fact that data discrepancies just aren't being considered and remediated. Granted, there's so many people on this committee with intense and are incredibly knowledgeable zoning, housing, subject matter experts. I've worked in financial services my entire career, so I don't have that, but I know that if we published financial statements that were incorrect and didn't fix them, we would be sued and fined to high heaven. So why is the city of New York being held to a lower standard than that? And then I don't know if this is a silly question, but I'm curious, George, if the previous agenda item on 1122 Madison, that building reached its height because it was part of the UAP program, as I understood it. Would whatever affordable units that came out of that be counted in this new model?
They should be.
They
Yes.
should be. Okay. It's a wild one. And I guess this isn't a question for George, it's more so for this board as a whole. I am, of course, in favor of everything we can to change this program, but I also want to make sure that we prepare for the worst case scenario, which is that this program goes ahead as is. Like, what does this board, what does this committee do to make sure that we can react quickly, that we're equipped with things? I know we can respond to proposals quickly, but this will become sort of business as usual. And what does this board do to make sure that we are on top of it and fighting against anything that is an abuse of the program? Valerie's waving. I don't know if you want to call on her.
Sorry, Valerie would like to respond?
I don't want to jump ahead, but I think two things. I mean, I think part of the letter, actually, I think, Kim, this is a problem that plagues us with the outdoor dining approvals. I think on the fast tracking, in terms of the rulemaking, if we're gonna, it's part of the rulemaking, it has to be like within 60 days of our last full board or land use meeting, so we don't get caught short by getting an application midstream and not being able to get the full 60 days to review it because of our schedule. If this is only community board, and I believe the review at the same time, George, is for the borough president's office at the same time.
That's right.
So it would have to be measured from a point. I hope, Elizabeth Rose, you're writing this down since it's your motion. Measured from the last, or the most recent, or counting from the next most recent board meeting to 60-day cycles. So it probably give us a little bit more, but it would give us at least room that we can figure out how to have a hearing on it in the appropriate time. And I just want to answer DJ, don't misinterpret my appeals board comment. I wasn't talking about like a legal review. I was talking more about, we get the data and we get like 60 days to say, no, you're wrong. And I think just bolstering Kimberly's point, it's mind-boggling to me that there were 3 agencies involved here and they all have they don't share data, they don't have data. And we have a lot of the data. And I think that it's important to at least have the opportunity, since we're going to be locked in for 5 years, either in a positive way or a negative way. If they're overcounting something or not counting it, I think we should at least have the right to say, hey, you're wrong, and your starting point is wrong. So I'm not advocating like an Article 78 proceeding to muck up the process at all. And I think lastly, forget it. I can't remember what I was going to say. So just keep going. Thank you.
Okay,
I think you had called on me, Elizabeth. I'm unmuted now. Michelle.
Oh, okay. I guess so.
Yeah, I also think we have to have a consideration of the summer months. So when we're talking about the amount of days, and I think, excuse me, sorry, I'm thinking more 90 than 60, but I don't know how we can comment on that. But look, generally speaking, is anybody else concerned about this as I am? I'm concerned about a fixed decision coming from a government entity that determines where a community is, you know, by a count that's given, and it's okay, you're within this amount, and therefore you have to do this and you have to do this. And yes, you can comment, and we can have an entity, a little board of appeals or something, we can do that. But basically, we are imposing this on you. And it's not a matter of being for or against affordable housing. It's a matter of having a system imposed that may impede or push away or supersede private enterprise. Now, I don't know, I'm not suggesting a way to mitigate that, because that takes a lot of thinking, and I'm happy to sit and think about it, but it takes planners and lawyers and architects and everybody to think about that. But I'm just generally concerned about this. And the fact that it was a ballot measure, well, that's my other concern about all the things that go on the ballot. The ballot is written by proponents of something. So it's always written in judgmental terms. It's never written with just the facts. It always says a method to improve, which is a judgmental word, a method to make this better. You know, that's how it's worded on the ballot. And then the public looks at it and says, sure, who's against improving and who's against making better? and those words, it's very possible that they weren't really applicable. That if a person was just writing the facts, it would say a proposal to change the method of getting affordable housing, and then you would tell exactly what the method is. And then if somebody voted, they would be voting for or against that method. So, and I posed a resolution which passed at this board the last time we worked on charter revision, saying just that one of the things we want as a board very badly is to have ballot proposals written in non-judgmental language, just describing what's actually happening. Now, I say that because I'm not so sure that if this particular proposal were worded in the words of exactly and just what's happening, that it would have passed. Because I think there are a lot of caveats here. I don't know how to mitigate against them, but it's worrisome. And now we're taking it as a fait accompli. So we're not even discussing whether or not we're for it. We're now just discussing what rules we have to mitigate it. But I want to do that with what I'm saying in mind. So basically, I'm concerned about that. What happens hypothetically if a community has no room for new building of any kind?
But can I just answer that? And maybe George, I mean, you still have to have a project. You still have to have a rezoning. Somebody has to make an application for, it's a land use application. And all, not all, because I don't want to minimize it, but these rules are telling you that if you meet certain criteria, you don't go through the full Euler process. You only do the community board and the borough president at the same time. And then if that gets, I think it's community planning board that approves. George can step in and tell me what the answer is.
City Planning Commission will be the
City
final.
Planning Commission will approve or deny it. Now, if you look at the last land use projects we had, maybe it's not a bad thing to bypass the city council, because we voted against the last two ULURPs and they still went through. So the city council voted unanimously in favor of the Lenox Hill project. So I can't tell how they're going to come out, but this is the law. A majority of people who voted for it. And so I think we're just trying to have some input on the rules that we think will help us have an influence on the outcome to the best of our ability.
I get it. Can I just ask George a last question, and then I'll move on. Just is it the expectation, George, that because there is a fast track process, that will encourage the real builders, developers to build these kinds of units? In other words, that's not necessarily true. But I'm asking, in your professional opinion, is that the expectation?
The expectation, I believe, is that it will make rezonings to facilitate the development of those types of units easier. And
yeah, but that doesn't mean that a developer will choose to do that because this process is in place. And that, to me, would be the incentive. Not once you've made a decision to do it and then you find out that it's easier. Anyway, so to that end, I'm a little skeptical about the ultimate benefit here. But having said that, when I said, are others concerned? I just want to voice I'm concerned.
I think Michelle, I think you articulated the 2 points I was making on the impossible. It's just that. Is it impossible? Yeah, it's great, but is it quote unquote impossible, George? Is it like you just said, will developers take will they, it's like you're fishing, you put it out there, but the fish aren't biting, the developers don't avail themselves of it.
Because they may decide ahead of time the kind of project they want to build, and just because this method is available to them doesn't mean that this is where they want to put their money. They can,
they have a better ROI somewhere else.
I mean, that's so. Anyway, those are my concerns. So I appreciate everybody's comments. George, thanks for being here, and thanks to the co-chairs.
Thanks, Michelle. Sasha.
Thanks, everyone. So I have a few thoughts just based on things people have brought up and said during this meeting. I don't think our district being in the bottom 12 will result in HPD funneling subsidy for projects in our district. I don't think we will get any new kind of funding or focus because the city views this district as a great district to have cross-subsidized units, and therefore we don't need additional subsidy. I also with respect to why employer-based housing does not count, it is not income restricted. So because it is not income restricted, the city, in my opinion, does not see that as value as affordable housing. The same way they don't find original rent stabilized housing valuable in the same way because it is not income restricted. So just kind of like going through why that doesn't count. I think there is a strange kind of contradiction with there are many districts that just don't build housing. They're not interested in housing. We see that in like Eastern Queens, Staten Island, places like that. I think this district, East 94th is a great example that there's a willingness and want for more housing. I think because of 485X, we're not going to see that much affordable housing being built, or it's going to be restricted to 99 units. And if the lot is not big enough to have multiple 99 unit buildings, we are not going to see it. It is not worth anyone's money. If the cross subsidy with 99 units doesn't work to still be under like 80% AMI, it's not going to happen. DCP is not a numbers place. I've worked there. This is me speaking as a private citizen. These people do not crunch numbers. They don't look at financial feasibility of projects. So I find it strange that this rule or the fast track looks at what has DOB permits, because we approved 94th Street. That's hundreds of units. I don't think that's going to be built anytime soon, to my own benefit because I live behind that site, but I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think the lot is big enough to split up the lot into multiple buildings according to DOB. I'm all in favor of like the resolution and the letter. I think that's kind of drilling down on those things. But what I find a contradiction here is that this was meant for districts that really have a reluctance to build housing. And I find that with the way the city council vote went for Blood Center at that time and place, and I wasn't on the board then, it seemed very clear that the city was saying, the Upper East Side, you are very much a kind of medical corridor. And we are pushing this forward because this is for the benefit of the whole city. And in fact, the wider tri-state area. So if we have de facto become this kind of medical corridor, and that's what we lose our housing to, because all of the sites in the presentation, those could have been new housing sites, but they're not being developed for that, for whatever reason, whether it's more lucrative to be med ed space, whatever that is. I think there should be consideration here with the city. This is really a comment to DCP. We can't both be responsible for, bolstering up the medical economy of the city and producing as much housing as in areas that there's lots of vacant land, lots of industrial land, and the growth potential for that. I am curious, though, as an actual question, George, if do we know what the like consequences are if you don't meet said quotas? Or what does that look like? Because again, we can approve things. It doesn't mean permits are being issued.
Right.
Like as of now, there are no 45X permits for anything over 99 unit buildings.
Right.
No one is, and again, DCP, they are not crunching numbers. I don't know what they're looking at, but it's always like, we should have 80-story residential buildings. It's so far from like reality. I think people should honestly take like with a grain of salt what comes out of DCP. This is to no offense of my former colleagues at DCP. I just don't think a lot of ideas coming out of DCP live in the reality of what can actually be built, what is going to get off the ground and be built. And if districts are being evaluated on what is actually getting permits, that is not to the district's fault. And I don't see fast track per se as a negative. I think it's just the connotation of being lowest on the list, because what it denotes to the general public is this district doesn't build affordable housing.
Right.
This district doesn't like affordable housing, which is not true. I think there are areas of Staten Island that maybe could get that award far more than our district. But yeah, I'm just curious if we know what has it been said, kind of what that consequence is if you are not meeting said quotas, and what does that look like, or is that still unknown?
Right. So this question is solely about how to determine the rules for fast track. It has nothing to do with quotas. We haven't been assigned the quotas yet. We haven't
Okay,
been
so it's
assigned
still
the
up in
targets
the
yet.
air.
So
Okay.
that is coming. What you're talking about are the targets. So
yes.
Right, those are coming.
Okay.
Those targets are coming before October 1, 2026. All right. And in theory, you're going to be getting a draft of them 30 days before they're adopted for your comment. But they will be coming, and it's unclear what the consequences will be. Right now, it's going to be a target, and land use decisions need to be consistent with those targets. That's all we really know.
Okay, that's helpful. Yeah, I wasn't sure if maybe it had been kind of thought of, but again, I'm in total support of like the resolution, what's being said in it. I just think like many things that come out of the city as a city worker, some things are not fully thought out. And I don't see this as a remedy for districts that have a lower, they're producing lower numbers of affordable housing units. I think this is a great tool if a developer has a great idea and they're like, oh, ULURP costs so much money and takes so much time. And, this is a way to shave off maybe a few 100,000 or 1 million from that. And maybe that will help move things along. But I think in this current economic climate and the current tax abatement on the market, I don't see this doing very much. So in that sense, I'm also fine with everything because I don't think it's going to do very much, but I am concerned or going to be more on the lookout on when the targets come out and what that looks like. Um, because again, I think it's really a shame that DCP is looking at this as you need DOB permits because we all know a project can be approved in ULURP and sit for years.
Yeah.
And it's counterproductive to say like, oh, you're not even pushing anything forward and you have no impact on the financing. Like you cannot make that move faster from a city and community perspective. And the city absolutely does not have the money to subsidize, those 12 districts. And I guarantee you in HPD's pipeline, we are not up there. They are not looking to push money into the Upper East Side. Okay, that's it. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Now, Marco?
Thank you, Elizabeth. Well, let me address one point quickly. We're talking about the statistics as very unreliable. Indeed, with the numbers that you put, George, I disagree. For instance, in the project of 79 on First Avenue, you called for 112 units was demolished, and I called for 79. And in the way that I obtained the information was I went building by building, checking the certificate of occupancy. And that is the number that they give it to me. So I don't know where you get that number, but always it's going to have discrepancy in the numbers. But I think I had to address directly to the motion. I forgot what is the first point. Can somebody tell me? Oh, Elizabeth, please.
Rose.
Elizabeth Rose.
So there were a couple of very specific points for things we would like to see different. One is include affordable preserved units.
Okay, can you hold that? I'm going to go point by point.
Include that in the calculation of the numerator.
Yeah, okay. I'm gonna be disagree because let me explain it to you. I did a study in the R10A district in the R10 district, and all the preservations of these affordable houses I found it very interesting, and I would like that idea. When I check the statistics, all those buildings have violations. And none of them after they receive the money they do anything. So to go in that direction, I think is just only to preserve subsidized, substandard of housing. I disagree with that part.
So
I respect your
I think
point. I respect your point.
the example that Adam pointed out with the Spitzer building, that is counter to that argument. It is not substandard housing. And to Valerie's point, if the developers get to count that towards increased bonus area, we should get to count that as affordable units in our district. It's parallel.
Well, okay, go ahead. That's my first point.
Next point, data transparency, the opportunity to review and correct.
Yeah, I already mentioned that
Yeah.
part because it's very challenged, very hard to obtain that good numbers. Thank you.
Yep. Third, create a weighting formula that counts deeper AMI or larger bedroom count units as more heavier weight than a single studio, so that there is a balance of smaller units, larger units, deep AMI, workforce housing, etc.
I agree with that
one is
part.
not automatically better
Yeah,
than
I
the other.
agree with that part. That makes sense.
Okay. Then there are a number of what I would consider smaller points, which we will include something about the timing of when the 60-day clock occurs so that
That's fine.
community boards can hold a hearing. The notion of possibly including affordable units that are approved because the community and community board have no actual power to ensure that anything that has been approved gets built.
Let me make a comment on that. I check all the buildings, especially the super tall buildings. All of them, they are HPD buildings. So that means they have been receiving all benefits. And all of them probably they already evaporate all affordable housing. A good example is, I think one of the fellow community members lives right there in the corner of my building. It's 82nd Avenue. And that building, they're supposed to go to 210 and 235. He went way all the ways up. When I ask people that live over there, that has been living more than 20 years, they told me that affordable housing is gone. So they already have benefits and you want to provide more benefits. I think I disagree with that part. Thank you.
Okay.
That's it? That's the only question?
Yeah.
Okay, so that is my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Alida is next, I believe.
Elizabeth, Sharon Pope Marshall has her hand raised and she hasn't spoken. So you can go to her and then I'm still formulating my thought on this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alida. I actually wanted to call a question on Elizabeth's resolution, unless, Alida, you wanted to make some additional comments.
I just would like to find a way, and I'm all for affordable housing and think we need it, but I'd like to find a way to ensure that we will actually get a net increase in affordable housing through their methodology. And I don't know how to do that because I know preserving the affordable housing, but there should be some recognition of the loss of affordable housing because we've lost more units than by thousands than any other district in the city. And if they don't count that and see what's going on here, we're only going to lose more. As George pointed out, we don't have empty space to just build wherever we would like. They're not not-for-profit developers, they're for-profit developers. So to cobble together a lot of these walk-ups next to each other and build something really tall and lose all of those units while they're putting up the minimum that they could because they're for-profit developers and they don't make profit from the not-for-profit, from the affordable units. It just seems that we will end up in no situation other than more market rate housing, which, because it forces out small businesses and community centers and the like has far consequences that are much further reaching than anticipated here. So if there's a way to count the loss so that we're not incentivizing developers to tear down what we have as affordable housing to give us fewer units and more congestion, which is I think not so good for the neighborhood. I'd like to see affordable housing, but I don't want to lose what we have. I don't want to lose the mom and pops. I don't want more crowding in the schools, more just more stuff that's a result of the increased density and congestion and market rate if we're not seeing any real benefit. So that's what I'm struggling with, how to do that. And I think we just need to count the loss of affordable housing as something to weigh in our benefit. And I don't know what the remedy would be, but incentivizing more market rate on faster timeline to give us the minimal housing that's less than what we already have seems just wrong.
So am I still unmuted?
I see that Adam and
Elizabeth.
DJ have their hands up, so I'm willing to wait, Elizabeth, before calling the question.
Thank you,
to hear from
Sharon.
both of them.
Can I respond to that?
Sure. From my point of view, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. So, Alita, I think many of us share that concern. I think there is the ability to put in a comment in the letter or that says, we are concerned about this. That said, that is part of the outcome process, not part of the fast track input process. So I think the resolution is about the fast track input process. And I think we can add a comment that says, that's all of that said, we are concerned about processes that result in a net loss of units.
But I disagree with you. If they're not part of the calculation, then they're not, it's going to be all lopsided again. They need to be part of a calculation because other neighborhoods are not suffering the loss of the units and the other consequences in the same way. So why couldn't it be part of the calculus for determining and we could agree to upzone when a Friedland comes along or whatever zoning change there is on 94th Street. When they come along and they want to do something, we don't need that program to say yes to them. We didn't need it with Friedland. If I mean, I've said what I've said, but I don't see why it can't just be part of how they determine who needs the affordable units, because we already have them and we don't have enough, but by losing them and not gaining any more, it's a net negative for us.
And what you're kind of suggesting is that the denominator change over time. And that's not what the case is here. They're looking for a one-time calculation that is a point in time. And so the loss of units is not something that can be reflected in a one-time calculation.
Yes, it can.
If anything, it actually helps us because we continue to have a lower total number of units of existing housing.
I mean, what's the point? Whether we're 12 or 1 on the list, I mean, George could say, it doesn't mean that whether we're number 1 on this fast track list or we're number 12, it doesn't really matter, because if no one's going to bring us the units, it doesn't matter how many we've lost. I mean, that's going to be what's going to happen here. Well, how are you shaking your head?
Because I just disagree, but I'm not.
Well, tell me how the rules for you can't make somebody build in our district. That was like Sasha's point. You can't make somebody build in our district. And the sooner that we get put on this list, in my opinion, the sooner people will realize that nobody is interested in putting these projects in our neighborhood, no matter how hard we pound the table. And maybe we'll be wrong. I hope we're wrong and somebody comes along with a project. But we couldn't even get city planning to look at our rezoning.
Right. but that's for a whole different set of reasons.
No, it's for the same
No,
reason.
what they said to me when we met with them, when a long time ago and before Russell, was that if we could show that we were not going to lose affordable housing, they would consider rezoning, and then they wouldn't look at anything. They were.
I don't know what you're talking about. We came to it with them with a plan last year to rezone from manufacturing to residential. And
Okay, we're
city
talking
planning
about.
told us, nice, beautiful plans, great. When you get a developer, come back to us.
Okay,
Like,
different thing.
so, I mean, that's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
So, if we can further that plan through getting on this list, I don't think there's anybody on this call or in our board who would be against that. But the reality is that, we can't make people, if there's no 45X, if there's no reason for a developer to make money, then they're not going to do it. And unless we had a lot of city-owned land, which we don't even have in this district, except for the project on 73rd Street, which they insist they want to make for profit related to either medical or something else. I mean, this is going to have, in my opinion, I'm sorry, but this is going to result in showing us whether our electeds really want to give us affordable housing. And it's going to make them put their money and their program where their mouth is. And if we don't come up with any more affordable housing as a result of this, that's why I don't want to wait 5 years. If we don't start getting affordable housing in the first 3 years, what could be the possible punishment? That they take 73rd Street and put workforce housing there? I think everyone on this call would applaud that.
Yes,
So,
workforce housing would be great, but I don't really see the benefit of tearing down more units than they would more.
But I agree with you, Alita, but it's totally a different issue and has nothing to do with the rulemaking related to this program. So I think,
well, to me, it does.
I'm all for putting a comment in the letter that, we're commenting on the rules, but we're losing affordable housing every day.
Yeah,
from the tear downs. I mean, I'm all for that, but it has no effect on the rulemaking. And we can do, and in this district, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. So we can continue railing against the loss of units in our district and the ability to build as of right and the loss of the units while still trying to comment on the rulemaking to try to get more affordable housing in our district. And we can do both. That's what I'm saying.
Why couldn't the rules say that it's not fast-tracked if you're tearing down more than you're putting up?
So again, Alita, that is the outcome of the fast track process. That is not the input to the determination of which districts are in fast track. And the resolution, I've recommended that we be very narrow with this resolution on the inputs because that is what the hearing is on.
Okay.
Thank you.
I mean, we can vote down every single project that tears down more than they're going to build.
Not
when we can disapprove it on that basis.
Fine. I don't want to take up more time. It's more offline, and I still disagree, but I get what you're saying, so I'll stop. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. And we have several more speakers that we look forward to hear. And if they can make it slightly more brief, I think we'd all be happy. So we look forward to hearing from you first, Adam.
So just two things. If you want to qualify for 485X or 421A, if you demolish a unit in your new development, that unit has to be affordable. So there's already a method in place to guarantee that any unit you demolish has to be replaced with an affordable unit. So if you demolish 10 units on a building, on a site, and you want to build a project and qualify for 485X, you actually have to have at least 10 of those units be affordable. So even if you build a 40-unit building, you have to build 25% affordable, not 20% affordable. So there's safeguards in place in order to guarantee that units demolished then get replaced with affordable units. But going back to what I was concerned about earlier, and again, I don't want to bother George to bring up his presentation again, but I went on New York Housing Connect and found the archived listings for just a couple of the projects that George showed. And 250 East 83rd Street and 300 East 83rd Street. George, in your list, did they show how many affordable units in the open data?
Yeah. Yes. So
They show
5 and 47.
so I'm sorry. So 250 East 83rd Street was
yes,
showing 9,
9.
and 300 East 83rd Street was showing 5.
Oh, that's interesting because when I go on New York Housing Connect, those two developments produced 33 and 28 affordable housing units on New York Connect. So it shows that what the open data, and this is of course not George's fault, this is what the city is pumping out. It's crap. What the city is pumping out is saying there's only 14 affordable housing units, when in fact there are 61. Yet at 1026 Third Avenue, your 27 matches the 27 on New York Housing Connect. It just shows you that the data is crap and it needs to be corrected, reviewed, and scrubbed before they do this calculation. Otherwise, it's ridiculous. That said, we need to build more affordable housing in this community board.
That's extremely concerning to me. I mean, we have spent so much time with this data, and the one thing that we didn't really think about is, are the numbers in the cells right? We were always like, how do we join and make certain that the timing is right? But the numbers in the cells aren't right, which is kind of crazy.
Now, George, I was going to ask you real quick, is it and calculations based on that? Was that what you were saying? These are unreviewable in the law?
Yes. Yes, there's
I
the
don't see
last
how
paragraph.
I don't. Again, I don't want to sidetrack, but I don't know how that stands up. Okay, I don't, that kind of disparity. I don't know how that stands up, but that's not for tonight's discussion.
I would love
I
the
don't know how
lawyers on
that
this to
stands
read
up.
that last paragraph
I
in
don't
the
know how
rule.
that stands up.
Crazy.
I just don't, because Adam's like, yeah, because the disparity. You're going to be a. How do you? Whatever. Sorry. We can go to DJ. Sorry, Elizabeth.
Okay.
I will try. I will try and be brief,
DJ?
Elizabeth. Yeah, thank you. I know we sort of moved away from the resolution. I've been talking more generally, but I think some important points were raised about whether fast track is actually going to incentivize projects. I mean, part of it is, I'm not a housing finance expert. I would defer to Adam, Sasha, others on that, but time makes projects cost more. And the point of all of these kind of fast tracks, ELERP as well with the other ballot proposition, is to reduce the time expense in the form of land carrying costs and taxes and professional fees and all of that. That does matter to builders. And so some marginal projects, they maybe do become feasible if you make both the time and then also the risk premium, which is that ELERP is discretionary and entering the process is quite risky because your project may just never see the light of day. That's part of what we're seeing at the state level with discussions around the Environmental Quality Review Act is adding more certainty around projects. I want to agree with Valerie's point, and Sasha on 485X and the numbers. I think it's a separate issue, but we probably should lend some weight to it as a board. I don't know if we've ever just passed a resolution saying we think 485X as currently constituted sucks. And then we can go to that with our elected officials, Seawright and Kruger, who a lot of us have relationships with, and start nudging them. And, whatever weight we have, start throwing it around a bit. I think it is chicken or egg to a degree. Some are arguing that all of these process and zoning changes won't amount to anything until the financial incentives are right. So do you try and get the financial incentives right before making all these process and zoning changes, or do you do the other first? But I do think doing one or the other lends more weight to getting good progress on the other, because now we can go to our electeds and say, look what this could enable if only 485X were better. So do something about it. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I think we have 3 more speakers, and it's, what is it now? 9 o'clock. So welcome first to Gail, then Michelle, and then Sharon. And I think that's the lot.
Thanks, Elizabeth. I think everyone has really made some good points. The bottom line is without the right incentives, we're not going to have developers really building in our district as much as we really want affordable housing, because they're not going to move forward without having some type of profit. But I think that Elizabeth Rose is right on point when it comes to a resolution that particularly deals with preservation. Because if we don't deal with preservation, then we are not protecting the real affordable units that we have in our district. So I think that that point should be extremely strong in the resolution, and we should ask for some type of a calculation and how that would impact the numbers to show that we were keeping affordable housing in place. And if the right incentives come down the line that can really entice developers to move forward and purchase very expensive property to do so, that's very different. But let's not fail to at least say that we want to keep what we already have that is affordable. Thanks.
Thank you. Michelle?
Thank you, Elizabeth. Yeah, I just want to add that the resolution, can you, in the timing, Elizabeth, can you put in something about the summer months? Because the board doesn't meet. So even if they give us some advance, if it's 30 days or 60, depending on when we would get a project, we would not be able to vote on it or consider it, I should say, if it falls in July or in June. So you may want to just say something in there about,
I will consult with Valerie on
yeah, about the summer
the
months.
timing clause.
Yeah. The other thing is, I think we all have to recognize that there's nothing about this so far that's incentivizing. There is nothing about this entire new way of going forward that has any incentives. And I'm okay with these rules as long as we keep them very, very tailored, because frankly, I'm concerned about making any comments on this before we know incentives and consequences, which is Alita raised that, and that I was thinking of that. Like, what happens if they come to our district? When we get to that, the horse is now before the cart, but when we get to it and they say you have to build blah, blah amount of housing, what's the consequences if you don't? What's the incentive to the developers to help you actually fulfill what the city is demanding of you? So I have a lot of concern with this thing not being rolled out in one piece. We're getting it piecemeal, and now we're voting on it piecemeal. So I'm concerned about that. The other thing is, in our discussion, we seem to be using the word resolution and letter interchangeably. A letter is very different than a resolution. I would be happier with a letter of suggestion, which I think is what Landmark West did, rather than a resolution, I think. So, you can take all the same points, Elizabeth, because your points were good ones, but I think I would put it in a letter. I'm not comfortable with the resolution that we have to take to the full board before we know anything else about the rest of this project and of this proposal, and there's a lot more to know.
This isn't a single project or proposal. I support a resolution because I think it gets more attention, and I support there being a letter commentary that adds around the resolution. So this is both a resolution with some specific points about how the 12 are designated, and then also some commentary about our concerns about fast track overall.
Well, then in the commentary, I would like, if you would, a comment, put in a very strong comment that Community Board 8 looks forward to hearing, the rest of the proposal. In other words, I want to hear, what about this proposal do they consider incentivizing? And what are the repercussions in, I'm not, I'll vote for this, but I'm not comfortable not knowing anything else about this. You don't know.
There is no proposal here. They haven't proposed anything to
No, I
us.
understand that, but when I say propose, yes, they have a
There is
plan.
a new law. It is part of the city charter
but
that
in
this
the,
fast track process has to exist.
no, but in that law, unless it's typical that they haven't completed the thought process. But in that law, if you come out and say that this process, that this has to exist, you should be able to say what you think would be incentivizing to a developer and what are the repercussions if it doesn't come through. If you're just making a proposal like we have a law and you have to abide by this law and you don't know anything else about it, that's not the way to come up with something that's going to basically change the entire city of New York. So I think
that
we
is
have
how laws are made all the time.
well, I think we have every right. I think we have every right to ask for them to apprise us of
That is the law, Michelle. What we are doing now, what they are doing now is saying the law has been passed and these are the rules and regulations that are going to govern the fast track. And this is what they're asking our input on is this is how it's going to work. And I strongly suggest earlier in the evening, George put up the links to the description. John Mangan from City Planning did a great job of describing how the fast track will work and how you will qualify, how you will move your project out of a traditional ULURP into a fast track. And if you don't meet that criteria, meaning you don't have an MIH and you don't have, a site or whatever, or an application, then it's not available to you.
I understand, but he's not dealing with the fact that there are people who won't want anything to do with this. So what's the repercussion?
But then it's a failure. Then the law won't accomplish whatever its
fail.
goal. There won't be any projects that are attempted to be fast tracked and will be on the same Euler process as before. So either that's what I'm saying. That's why we're saying we're not in a position to determine whether fast track is going to help us or hurt us get affordable housing. Okay. It won't affect how many buildings in our district are torn down or whatever. But if we get this process rolling and the rules are out there and no one comes to Community District 8 to do a fast track, then it's a failure in our district.
But what's the consequence?
The consequence is we're not going to get any affordable housing faster than we would have under the ULURP. And to DJ's point,
the consequence is we stay on the list.
Yeah, we stay on the list.
We stay on the list.
The worst thing that can happen, I guess, the penalty is the city buys some land and maybe actually build something. I don't know. I mean, and would that be so bad? I'm not sure. I don't know. I mean, but this wouldn't be that. Look, City of Yes hasn't really resulted in any more affordable housing in our district either, and we knew that going in. So,
but too bad the powers that be didn't know that going in.
Well, I think look, my impression of this, and I think we should vote based on my impression of this is people are throwing spaghetti against the wall to see what sticks. And we're in a housing crisis. And so far, I think it's questionable whether any of the proposals that have come forward have really resulted in any more housing. And to George's original point, part of this fast tracking process was aimed at neighborhoods not in the densest part of the city, not to the island of Manhattan, but to neighborhoods in Queens and Staten Island and Brooklyn where there has been no affordable housing. And so that's, if there are developers in those areas who have this kind of housing, I think we will see those applications move faster. I would be pleasantly surprised to see if some project comes before us on a fast track, other than our own application to rezone the manufacturing district to a residential district. And we may be the first fast track application in our district. Wouldn't that be amazing? Yeah, look at Adam. He's excited now. So can we vote on sending this letter with these limited
call the question, which Sharon was going to do.
Yeah.
Okay, the question has been called. Is there Is there a second? Oh, you go ahead, Elizabeth.
I think, was Sharon going to do it, or? Sharon?
Unmute her.
Yeah, I can't.
Because Adam is excited. I want to call a question.
Second.
Okay, now what exactly is the question?
I
I
think we're
want to call a question on Elizabeth's resolution. I seconded a resolution, not a letter. So I want to call a question on Elizabeth's resolution.
And Elizabeth, if you could just forward that to us so we can get I have the general points, but I know you have a lot more detail. Thank you. If you could send that to us, that would be great.
When you say us, Ed, is that the committee or the co-chair?
Well, I meant
No,
the
no,
co-chair
the
for the
co-chairs.
minutes. Co-chairs for
Actually,
the minutes. For the minutes, Michelle.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
And if it's adopted, we can still send the resolution and just say that it's subject to ratification by the full board.
By the full
I
board.
mean,
Yeah.
that was the original intention.
Okay. So
And is it accompanied by a letter? Because be it therefore resolved has not been
Well, the be it therefore resolved is preserved affordable units should be included in the numerator calculation. The weighting of affordable units in the numerator of the calculation should be weighted, or the numerator should be weighted to support a balance of smaller and larger units and lower and higher AMI, not so that we do not overly incentivize only a single type of affordable unit above all types of affordable units.
I'm calling the question.
Thank you. I'm just giving
we have to have
here's what's resolved.
there is no question
The
unless
data
we have this.
transparency on the input data with an opportunity for review, including our examples of 250 East 83rd Street and 300 East 83rd Street, demonstrating just how way off the data is. And I think those are the points as it relates to the calculation. I think all other points that have been discussed as it relates to the ultimate process of fast track, including commentary on the amount of notice that we are given.
That's the whereas.
The notion that we have no control over whether approved affordable units will ever get permitted. And the concern that the fast track process will not reflect net loss of units, or will not disincentivize net loss of units in that process, are all comments about the outcomes, not the inputs. And the resolution is entirely about the inputs. And yes, Anthony Cohen, I know I have to take a whack at the first draft.
Okay.
Okay, voting.
Yep.
I'm calling the question.
Question's called.
Would
And it has
you all
been
like me-
seconded.
It has been seconded.
Shall I call the roll? This is my first roll call on a Zoom meeting. Forgive me.
Oh, please do.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and unmute everyone. And Ashby.
Yes.
Ashby votes yes. Barron.
Yes.
Barron votes yes. Birnbaum.
Yes.
Birnbaum votes yes. Camp.
Yes.
Camp votes yes. Cone.
Yes.
Cone votes yes. Falkson.
Yes.
Falkson votes yes. Hartzog.
Yes.
Hartzog votes yes. Kennedy. Dylan's still on? Nope. All right. Later.
Yes.
Later votes yes. Mason.
Yes.
Mason votes yes. Pope Marshall.
Yes.
Pope Marshall votes yes. Rose.
Yes.
Rose votes yes. Selim.
Yes.
Selim votes yes. Selway.
Yes.
Selway votes yes. Tamayo.
Yes.
Tamayo votes yes. Wald.
Yes.
Wald votes yes. Weiner.
Yes.
Weiner votes yes. Did I miss anybody?
Not that I see.
All right. In that case, it's 16 yes, 0 no's, and 0 abstentions.
Good.
Thank you very much.
Nice.
Now, my co-chairs, do we think that it's
We moving to old business?
take up the next issue, or do we put that off till next month?
I think we put it off.
Can
I
I
make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye,
everybody.
thank you.
If you're
Good night,
again, if you're
everyone.
free
Bye.
tomorrow night, watch the program.
Can you please have Ian send around the link and the information again?
Yes, we will do that tonight. We'll send it to the entire board so
Thank you.
everyone can be
Thank you
educated.
very much, George. I think we forgot to say that.
Yes.
Thank
Thank
you,
George.
Please
Thanks,
know we're
George.
very, very grateful to you.
Bye now.
Always.
Thanks, everybody.